All right, guys. The Democrats truly are toast. This is really something. So Axios has this new article out, midterm special, key House, Senate, and governor races to watch. And so let me show you, here you can see, what the districts are and the politicians here. Let me read you the key portion here. The midterm outlook for House Democrats is so bleak that even members in districts President Biden won by 10 to 15 points are in danger of losing their seats, according to election experts. D plus 10 and D plus 15 seats are now toss-ups. Heavily Democratic districts are now toss-ups. The Cook Political Report just revised its fall House forecast to a net Republican gain of 20 to 35 seats. Cook shifted 10 races in Republicans' direction and 2 toward Democrats, with 35 D-held seats now labeled toss-up or worse. 35 toss-up or worse. This year was always going to be difficult for Democrats. Historical trends suggest the president's party typically loses seats. Now, let me pause here for a second. This piece of conventional wisdom drives me crazy. This is only in modern American history. If you go back to the FDR days, there was no rule. Hey, if the Democrats won the last election or the last 2 elections, well, they're going to get wiped out in this upcoming election. That's a modern phenomenon. Why? Because nobody is materially delivering for the American people. FDR won the presidency 4 times. Democrats had 80% of the House of Representatives and 80% of the Senate. So they delivered for Americans with the New Deal. And then Americans delivered for them and voted for them endlessly. So this idea of it's always going to be tough, it's a fallacy. It's this naturalistic fallacy of this is just the way it works. No, it works like this because you didn't deliver for Americans. If you delivered for Americans, you'd be talking about Democrats are going to pick up more seats in the upcoming election. So this drives me crazy. This defeatist idea, this silly idea that it's cyclical and it always was and it always will be cyclical. No, you can change that cycle with your policy approach and with fighting for the right ideas and getting some of them implemented. 23 House Democrats have announced they won't seek re-election compared to just 11 Republicans. President Biden's approval has been hovering in the low 40s for several months, with inflation driving down his popularity. Polling shows Republicans are winning the general congressional ballot. Would you rather vote for a Democrat or for a Republican? By an average of 1.9 points, and they still have room to grow. Now let me explain to you why that's so devastating. With all the gerrymandering around the country, Democrats would need to win by 5 or 6 points just to hold on to the number of seats they have. Not only are they not winning by 5 or 6 points, they are actually down by 1.9 points, which really means they're down by 6 or 7 points. Wow. The most competitive states this cycle are those where a court or commission drew a congressional map as opposed to a partisan one. He points to races in New York, Michigan, Arizona, and California. That's where you're going to see a lot of money spent. Wasserman says the situation is especially perilous for House Democrats facing tight races in orphan states where there's no competitive statewide election driving turnout. Those orphan states include California, Indiana, Iowa, New Jersey, Ohio, Texas, Virginia, Washington, and arguably New York, Wasserman tells Axios. The only path to survival for those Democrats may be to go scorched earth against still undefined Republican challengers, which at this point in the race includes essentially all first-time candidates. Some of the most competitive House races are playing out across several battleground states with huge impacts on the 2024 presidential election like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Nevada. Okay. So you get the gist of it here. I said it before, I'll say it again. In today's day and age, it really is the case that politics is much more national than it's ever been before. In the past, politics was more local. Now, politics is definitely more national. So with Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Mayor Pete and people like that, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, these people being the face of the Democratic Party, they are dragging down Democrats all across the country. This is a wave election for Republicans. And the fact of the matter is, unless Joe Biden gets his rear in gear and delivers for the American people now, it's going to be such a bloodbath, it's going to be tough to watch. So Biden would have to really start committing to change. He should legalize marijuana through executive order, which he absolutely can do. He should free all the nonviolent drug offenders, which he absolutely can do. He should sign an executive order eliminating all student loan debt. He absolutely has the right to do that. I mean, if he was smart, he would also sign an executive order to expand Medicare to everybody in the country. Now, the chances of him doing that are basically 0%, which speaks to how his incrementalism is poisonous and toxic, and he's also bought by the health insurance industry, so he would never do that. And so it's hopeless, really, when you look at it right now, because even just taking bits and pieces of Build Back Better and trying to get them through reconciliation, that would be huge. So Manchin says he supports, 60% of the provisions in Build Back Better. Okay, so propose a bill on universal pre-K. Make him vote on it. Make the Republicans vote against it, and then you could use that in the upcoming election. Propose a standalone bill on lowering prescription drug prices. They say they support it. Okay, let's see you vote for it. Watch the Republicans vote against it. Clonk them over the head with that in the next election. Again, you could do some of these things just through executive order and then tell the Supreme Court, okay, you want to slap it down? Go ahead, but it's going to be a year or two before the litigation gets to you, so I guess this is going to be implemented until then. There's so many things that could be done that they're not doing. And they're just sort of sitting there in their ivory tower, naively thinking like, well, maybe there's a shot that we win, as we continue to do absolutely nothing. When Biden had his highest approval rating, it was like 52 or 54%, and it was when he cut $1,400 checks to everybody in the country. Wow, would you look at that? Materially deliver for people, and they support you. Now he's not doing anything, and this is the result. So Democrats down ballot. I mean, D plus 10 and D plus 15 seats are now toss-ups, or some of them are lean Republican. I cannot adequately put into words how big of a shellacking is coming. We're looking at a 2010 Tea Party-like wave, or even worse for the Democrats. And this is even with the Supreme Court about to scrap Roe versus Wade, which in theory should help Democrats, but the economy, inflation, and the total lack of any material support from the government is crushing the Democrats even more than the Roe v. Wade thing is helping them. That's astonishing. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.